Welcome to the Airplane Spoon podcast, where I talk about real questions and real stories about feeding children. I'm Sarina Murrell, a feeding therapist and the director of the Airplane Spoon. Every week, I share stories from my feeding therapy practice and talk about the challenges many families experience around food and meal times. Today's question is, what happened? My child used to eat so many foods and now they don't. And if this sounds familiar, I want you to know something. You are not alone. And in some cases, this is not regression, this is development. Today, I want to talk to you about 4 reasons for why this happens and what might be changing for your child and how to understand this shift without panic. I'm also going to share some strategies that I use and share some stories about different children and families I support along the way. So let me repeat it again. Today's question is, what happened? My child used to eat so many foods and now they don't. This is a question I ask families right from the beginning when I'm starting out support with them. I ask them, are there any foods your child used to eat? And I call them used to foods. And families will know right away what I mean because they can think about, oh, yeah, they used to eat avocado. They used to eat blueberries. They used to eat bananas, but now they don't. And sometimes this might be like weeks or months or years that they have stopped eating this. So let me talk to you about 4 reasons about why this may be happening for your child developmentally and what might be going on for them more internally, and also some strategies along the way. So the first reason is that foods change more than we think. I want you to understand this. Foods are not always the same, even when they look the same. And for adults, those small changes might not matter much. First of all, because we have a lifetime of experience and variability and understanding and the language and the processing to get that maybe this pizza tastes different than this pizza, or this strawberry tastes different than this strawberry. But for children, especially young children under 5 years old, those very small changes can feel very big. So, produce foods like fruits and vegetables are going to vary because those are living foods. And also, foods that we prepare, like pasta, that's going to vary. Maybe one day the pasta is cooked just right, and the next day it's maybe more squishy, or maybe it's a little firmer. This variability can create this idea of not knowing what to expect. Even brand changes matter, right? If you have a certain brand of crackers and then you buy another brand of crackers, there's going to be some subtle changes and differences. The taste, the smell, the texture, even temperature can be something that can change. And for many children, eating is about predictability. Learning is about predictability. They need to know what to expect. So if something feels different or unfamiliar or unexpected, the food no longer feels safe. It's not that it's dangerous, but it's unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is uncomfortable. And so children are saying, no, that's different. I can't trust that anymore. If they had a blueberry, and their blueberries are always kind of the same, and then they had this really squishy blueberry, ooh, I don't know. If I look at a bowl of blueberries, I don't know if one of those is going to be squishy or sour. And so I'd rather just refuse them all instead of taking that risk. Many times children don't really know what happened, or they can't tell us with language or the words, about what made that unsafe or made them want to refuse it. They just say, no, no, yucky, I don't want it, if they're talking, or they'll just push it away or get upset or cry. And we don't always know, but it is important that we can add language to talk about these variabilities. And so if I intentionally create an opportunity to show these variability, for example, with pasta, maybe I'll have some dry pasta and it's like, oh, it's really hard, it's crunchy. Oh, I don't eat this. And then if I have some cooked pasta, but maybe it's undercooked and it's kind of hard. And some pasta that might be just right, or some really soft and mushy pasta, I can now put language to these differences. Even though the word pasta is the same, now they know it's squishy pasta, or it's fresh, or it's soft pasta, or it's firm pasta. And I have descriptors to help me process, why is this different? If we have, strawberries or something, and I could be like, this one is firm and this one's a little squishy, or this one's very sweet and this one is very sour. I can now create a different level of understanding because the language can help for that processing of why is it different. The other important thing here is that we don't stop offering just because a child refuses. Maybe we could offer just a few, or we can eat with them and model it, right? I'll have some blueberries. Do you want some? And I see this and I say this because often when a child is refusing a food, parents just kind of stop offering it. And I get it. It's food wasted. There's a power struggle. But if they're never seeing it or having it put in front of them, so
exposed
that's
to it,
reason number
how
one.
are they
Foods
expected to eat
change.
it again?
The second reason that a baby or a toddler or a child might refuse food is that the shift of reflexively eating that has now turned into more intentionally choosing to eat that. When babies are very young, they eat reflexively. If something's placed in their mouth, they often accept it. They're not thinking about it. This is just their body reaction of receiving that food. It is happening to them. But as they grow, that shifts. They start to kind of notice that, oh, this is in front of me. I remember experiences around this, or I form my preferences, and I get to decide my level of involvement with this. Instead of eating reflexively, they begin to eat independently or consciously. And they'll start asking, kind of in their way, do I recognize this? Do I trust this? Do I like this? It's not a loss of skill, it's a development of thinking and to be involved in that process. And I just had this morning actually with a family I saw of a little one who is 10 months old, and he's learning to eat solid foods. And he will eat purees on a spoon that are fed to him as long as he's distracted doing something else. So he might be playing with something. He likes to play with the cap of the puree pouch. Sometimes he might be trying to play with little puzzles or balls. If he's doing something else, then he will accept the spoon and eat. But the moment that we kind of put that toy away, or I try to give him the spoon, he gets really upset about it. And so what that tells me is that he needs help in this area of learning how to be involved in the act of eating. He's okay with it happening to him, but there's something about him being part of it, him deciding, him grabbing the spoon, or him leaning in or looking at it, having it be offered to him that is too much for him right now. That doesn't mean that he can't learn that, but we also need to have a little bit of offering that to him, creating that awareness so that he can then start to learn that he's part of that process, that he doesn't have to distract himself in order for that to happen. That's showing that something about it's hard. And so he needs to distract himself to be able to get through it. And that's what we're working through. But that's that second reason, that shift of reflexive to involvement intentional, which ties into the third reason. The third reason is the act of saying no or deciding. This is a big developmental milestone. Children can discover that they can say no. It's huge because they're developing their identity, their sense of self, their ability to control a certain situation. And food can be one of those areas, one of those first areas where they can practice that. Because as much as maybe we can put food in front of a child or we can try to put it up at their mouth, we can't really force a child to eat food or to swallow food. And we should not be doing that either. And so a child deciding this is their ability to develop their autonomy, their self decision. It's not that they're trying to be difficult and they're not trying to play power games or control you. They're just learning. I have a voice. I can choose. I can refuse or say no. And when they feel unsure about something or overwhelmed, they'll often return to what they know. They'll stick to foods that feel familiar, predictable, safe. And so something that might have happened around a previously accepted food, and then they said no, but they kind of made that switch in their head, right? Yes and no. And this is also part of child development, that everything is kind of binary, that they think of something as good or bad, all or nothing. And so if they said, yes, I eat this food, and then something happened, they said no, but now they're like, okay, no, I don't eat this food. That middle ground, but maybe sometimes I eat this food and sometimes I don't, is the challenging ground that we need to support and work on, that is more challenging and inconsistent for a child because it's sometimes. But one way we can support this and thinking about this binary yes, no thinking is, instead of offering food for children in a yes, no option, like, do you want carrots? We can offer choices like, do you want big carrots or baby carrots? Or do you want one or two? Do you want long sticks or shredded? Any time that we offer a choice, that child is able to decide. Instead of it deciding yes or no, they're deciding a little bit of how or in what way it's presented or in how many. And they're part of it. It's not just happening to them, but they get to be considered. Your idea, your opinion, your decision matters. And that can help with them to be more accepting of these foods as opposed to it just being all or nothing. Okay, and related to this, let me share with you. Sometimes I have children who tell me, I'm not going to eat that. But please note, I don't say, you don't have to eat it. I say, can you cut it? Can you peel it? Can you mash it? I give them something to do with the food that's not eating it. And this builds their confidence in interacting with that food. Then often I'll just like pop one in my mouth, or I'll give a piece to a parent to eat and that they could eat it as well. And sometimes a child who just said, no, I don't want to eat it, or yucky, they might put it in their mouth too. Okay, granted, they might just take it right out of their mouth, but they put it in their mouth because they wanted to, not because they were told to. If we tell a child, here, eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. Come on, just take a bite, eat it. They're not going to do it because that's a lot of pressure and they don't feel like they have any decision in that. And if we tell them the opposite of, you don't have to eat it, they're never going to eat it. We want them to eat it. It's not a negotiation of, again, all or nothing. In this case, is how do we support the middle? Because the all or nothing in this case is the parent wants the child to eat all of it. The child wants to eat none of it. So, how do we help that middle learning ground? If we redirect the language to success around something that's not eating, like cutting, mashing, peeling, we can remove the pressure of eating. And often curiosity can take over and create intrinsic motivation because it's not scary anymore, or because I get to decide. And this can help for new foods too, but also for learning about those used to foods. And the fourth reason that a child might have used to foods is that if pressure is too high, then acceptance goes down in anything. If there's so much pressure around anything, let's say there's a ton of pressure around like riding a bike without success, then I'm going to stop wanting to ride my bike anymore because it doesn't feel fun. It doesn't feel exciting. I don't want to do it. There's just too much pressure. And with food and feeding, even if it's not this food itself, let's say the child is eating strawberries, but there's a lot of pressure around other foods to eat. Like, let's say you want them to eat rice or you want them to eat oatmeal. And there's so much pressure around that, that then they might choose to stop eating foods that were once accepted because the pressure's too high. And so again, this is related to safety. We talked about foods changing and that can kind of influence a child's feeling around if a food feels safe or predictable. But pressure is also influencing kind of the safety and the level of calmness in a situation. There are going to be some automatic certain pressures that occur with any mealtime or foods. Just sitting down at the table is a pressure. I'm supposed to eat right now. Putting food in front of a child is a pressure. I'm supposed to eat right now. Eating in front of a child is a pressure. These are all nice natural exposures and routines around food that can help them to learn about these expectations, but they are still kind of pressures. I'm talking more about these very high verbal pressures, and especially when we're trying to play a negotiation game around if you eat this, then you can have this. If you don't eat this, then you can't have this. It goes back to the power struggles that we talked about in a child's ability to decide. But pressure, negative associations can shift how our body internalizes food. Our brain releases a stress hormone called cortisol when we feel stressed. And if we have too much of that, then our hunger, our digestion, and sometimes even our pleasure around that food or in that situation can be shut off. And so even if I know I like this cookie, it could be something very pleasurable and I'm eating this cookie. But if the situation itself has a lot of pressure in it, then I'm going to feel like this cookie is no longer desirable, even though I like this cookie. It could be that the other things that I'm expected to eat, I don't want to eat, or I'm not sure about eating them, or there's just a lot of challenges and difficulty around meal times. And so that bleeds over into the success foods. And we see that the number of foods reduce and they drop off. And it's thinking about this more in big picture of what does the mealtime environment and situation look like? If it's uncertain and unpredictable, then a child is going to move towards safety, and safety might be deciding not to. It's not stubbornness. It's a little bit of protection. The body and the brain are trying to stay with what feels comfortable, what feels predictable, what feels safe. A couple of days ago, I had a feeding therapy session with a 6-year-old child who used to eat mandarin oranges. His dad brought in mandarin oranges into the session for us to work on for his challenge or his learning food. And we were peeling them. And I have a little monster container. It's one of those baby snack containers that have like the teeth that you can put in for snacks, but I call him the compost monster. And so we put in the foods parts that people don't eat, the compost monster eats. And so we were peeling off the skin of the peel of the mandarin orange and giving the peels to the compost monster. And then the boy wanted to put the slices of oranges in the compost monster. And that's a little of a rule that I have that no, the compost monster doesn't eat the foods that people eat. He just eats the parts of the food that people don't eat. And so he tried putting the orange in the monster's mouth, and I said, no, no, no. And I had the monster spit out the orange slice. And then I said, I want to practice that like the compost monster. And I put an orange slice in my mouth and I spit it out. And I said, I like to be the compost monster. I'm going to spit it out. And then the boy, he took a slice and he did it too. He put it in his mouth and he spit it out. And then, which was great, right? He put it in, he felt comfortable around that to know that we were just spitting it out. And this is a strategy I use in feeding therapy that I can get food out of my mouth. I can put it in and get it out, and that's a nice safety learning strategy. The other piece is actually, I said, oh, I'm not a compost monster. I can eat the slice of orange if I want to. And I want to. So then I took it and I ate it. And then he took it and he ate it. And he did it too. And then his dad told me this week that he's back to eating mandarin oranges in his lunch. Just normally. Like he didn't stop eating them for almost a whole year. And this is the thing about used to foods. Used to foods are a great type of food to try to reintroduce or work on, whether that's just at home and having snacks or in feeding therapy, because there's already a previous success, previous association, previous learned experience around consumption that it's not new. There might be some negative association there that happened that made that stop. And we might not ever know what that negative association was, why that suddenly changed, and now they're refusing that. And the metaphor I like to give around this is that sometimes we can see that there's a bunch of weeds in our garden, and we can just sit there and think about how did these weeds get here? What if they came from the birds, or maybe the squirrels planted some things when they were burying their nuts, or maybe the wind blew that in. But if we just sit and think about why those weeds are there, that doesn't really help the situation that the weeds are there. We need to pull the weeds. Sometimes we don't know why a child might be refusing certain foods, but that doesn't mean that we can't try to address it. We don't know, but we can create new associations instead of just trying to figure out what happened. Let's just create new associations, and can those be positive associations? So used to foods are great foods to start with to get back to trying to eat them again because they did have a history of eating them. They're not brand new. We talked about 4 reasons of why your child might have foods that they used to eat and now they don't anymore. We talked about how foods change and they can be varied in their taste, their texture, their temperature, their presentation, and that can be unpredictable and unsafe for a child for them to refuse. We talked about how a child shifts from reflexively eating to eating more intentionally and participating in that. We talked about how a child has the ability to say no and to decide and want to be able to decide their preferences and what feels right and good for them. And we also talked about the pressure of an environment and how we might inadvertently be creating negative associations based off of our language or expectations or how we're setting that up that might be too much for a child and then they drop some foods. But what I want to say with you at the end here is that this is very common. If your child used to eat many foods and now eats fewer, this is something that many families experience, especially between like 18 months and 4 or 5 years old. This period is often about strong preferences and desire for sameness and predictability. And so they'll refuse certain things or they'll narrow down certain things. And I get that it can feel scary. But in many cases, it is part of normal development. It's not easy, but it's common. So if your child used to eat more foods and now eats fewer foods, just take this shift often reflects growing awareness, developing their preferences, increased independence, or a need for predictability. Knowing this, how can you think about this differently to support your child in their meal times so that they can have more comfort and curiosity and safety and success? So, feeding is not just about food, it's about trust and safety and relationship. That's what I got for you for today's episode on the Airplanes Food Podcast, where we talked about what happened. My child used to eat so many foods and now they don't. Feeding challenges can feel really overwhelming for families, but know that you're not alone. Many children need time, support, and positive experiences with food as they learn to eat. Remember, you're doing an amazing job supporting your child on their feeding journey. You've got this. Love, enjoy, and eat.